All right. There's a bit of this, not really sure where I should stand, but hello, everyone, and welcome to Stablecoin Stories. I'm Joanna. I lead marketing here at Dynamic. It's so great to see everyone here. You all look so great. Don't be shy. Feel free to come up a little bit closer. Like, we don't bite, so feel free to do that. Thank you so much. Why don't we do like a quick icebreaker, maybe turn around, just meet someone, say hello, and we're also live streaming, so I'm going to say hi to the people online. I think last time I checked, there's like at least 200 of you guys, so thank you so much for coming on up. All right. Awesome. Okay. All right, this is great. We can keep the conversations going at the coffee break, which we'll be having after the initial session. So just like a quick high-level overview, today is all about hearing real stories of how builders are building with stablecoins at scale. And just to give a high-level agenda, we're going to have some opening remarks from the co-founders of Dynamic and Zero Hash. Then we'll have a quick lightning interview with Felix, and then we'll have a short break. No, then we'll have a panel. We'll have a panel with A16Z Crypto and then PayPal. Then that's when we'll have a short coffee break. And then after that, you'll come back and we'll have the fireside chat with Dynamic and Zero Hash. And then we'll end the day with 2 lightning talks from Ramp and Kraken Inc. And so really great to have everyone here. So now I'm going to welcome up Itai and Edward so they can do opening remarks.
Hey, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. So first, just a huge shout out first to 2 folks, to Sean from the Zero Hash team and to Joanna from the Dynamic team for putting all of this together. So I had nothing to do with it. They did all the work, so just a huge shout out for putting an incredible event together. Second, we are literally sitting in the Ramp office, and they have been extremely gracious with their space, with their time. So just incredible shout out to them for building first a cool office, and second, letting us use it. So thank you for that. And third, to the wonderful Zero Hash team for being incredible partners of Dynamic and just, I guess, working with us across multiple initiatives. So it's really cool to see this coming together. So just thank you for that. Just wanted to say a couple words, and then we'll actually hear from folks who are experts in their respective fields around everything stablecoin. But it's really cool to see when we started Dynamic, our pitch was pretty straightforward. We said that, look, if you fast forward 5 years and you open every app on your phone, it's going to have a wallet component to it, right? The world's going to move to kind of crypto-based transactions, and that really starts with the wallet. And it's really cool to see stablecoins being the kind of the way this actually gets global extremely quickly, right? We're getting to a point where 3 years in, we have 2 years for a statement that in 5 years, everything will have a wallet. And stablecoins are really the kind of, the way this actually becomes global very, very quickly. So it's nice to see that turn from idea and theory into actual reality so quickly. And it's really cool that it's everyone here who are builders, and we'll talk about stats in a second, actually get to experience this in their day-to-day kind of work and personal lives. Now, a couple key things, wouldn't be a founder if I don't shamelessly plug 2 products that we launched today, or a product and a website that we launched today. So first, we launched something called StableHub today. If you're curious about learning more about stablecoins, we have a hub now, dynamic.xyz/stablecoins. It's completely free. You can go in, learn, see the ecosystem, see the different type of stablecoin that's available. Go there. It's really nice. And the second thing is we launched something called Stablecoin Accounts today. That's your ability to really quickly plug in a single SDK that lets you do everything from embedded wallets to an on-ramp to off-ramp to moving money globally very, very quickly. You can really build your own version of Venmo within like 5 minutes. So that's kind of the second thing. I have some stats just about who's in the crowd that I wanted to share, which is pretty cool. Bear with me for a second. So from the folks that signed up, 30% of you are deep in stablecoin infrastructure or compliance. 27% are building crypto native products. 23% are exploring how stablecoins might work for your use case. And 20% of you are in fintech and payments. which makes this a really interesting crowd, which also makes this a really great opportunity to just meet people around you. And so besides the conversations, besides the talks, I urge everyone to kind of get to know folks during the coffee breaks and kind of interact with them a lot. And with that, really excited for this day. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to head it over to Edward to talk a little bit more. Go for it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Itai. Thanks also for being a great partner, both on this event and also more generally. So it's great to see everyone, great to see so many builders. I think just thinking about the last few weeks, I mean, there's palpable excitement about stablecoins, right? It's kind of ironic that now we check the share price of a stablecoin company as opposed to talking about the price of Bitcoin. So I think that kind of indicates just the excitement around this space and how much people are actually checking and the zeitgeist that it's capturing. I think there's really a couple of points that I think the Genius Bill also opens up that I think today as builders we need to think through. So I think the Genius Bill is going to do a couple of things. The first is I think there's only going to be more stablecoins, right? There's going to be a fragmentation of ever more stablecoins. I think secondly, there's going to be more stablecoins on more chains. And so additionally, there's this kind of second layer of complexity that's going to exist. And so I'm saying all this because I think this opens up a lot of opportunity and is actually one of the elements of what Zero Hash does as its mission, which is abstracting away the complexity around many assets across many chains. I think secondly, what it does is also increase the need for interoperability, right? If you have JPMMD and then you are trying to send that to Citi, how do you actually do that, right? So I think these are two technical challenges, regulatory challenges that we need to think through. And then I think thirdly, from a usability perspective, and this is obviously something that Dynamic and Zero Hash think about a lot, which is how do we solve the usability challenge around stablecoins? If I'm looking to send a stablecoin today, I don't really want to have to ask the question, what chain are you on, right? What stablecoin do you want? And so I think those are the three elements that we're really driven by, and is one of the themes that you'll hear today, is how do you solve the challenge of many assets, so the technical complexity, interoperability, and usability. And those really are the three things that really drive us every single day when we think about the technology and the business that we need to build in stablecoins. And so I'm looking forward to more discussions from different builders today. So without further ado, we'll welcome on the first panel. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks so much. I also forgot to do a little bit of housekeeping, but if you're like hungry and nibbly, feel free to bring in snacks and water and drinks while you're in the auditorium. And then if you need to use the restroom, it's just like around the corner on the right-hand side, so just walk all the way back there. But yeah, so like just to kind of like kick things off, who here has sent money to like their loved ones? So like a lot of people in this room, right? So it just really shows like remittances are a really powerful use case, and like basically 90% of the people in this room have sent money to like loved ones or for friends for trips and all of those use cases. So the first interview that I want to invite up is Hugo Rodriguez from Felix, as well as Mark Daly from Zero Hash, who will be interviewing him. So if you can get them both up, you can both share more about what Felix has been working on and how they're really powering remittances for millions of users. You give them a warm welcome.
All right. We get to kick this off. That's great. Well, Mark Daly, Chief Business Officer at Zero Hash. Really happy to be here today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you to the Dynamic team for co-hosting this event and Ramp for their beautiful office. Really happy to have Hugo here. It's our 6-month anniversary since our last fireside chat. So I'm excited to jump into like what's changed since then. But maybe you can kick things off, talk more about what Felix is doing in this space. I think it was mentioned earlier about Circle and IPO of a stablecoin company. I think today their market cap surpassed total USDC that they have minted so far. But Felix is very different in that you're actually in the true use case of remittances. So maybe you can give a bit of an intro first to Felix and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for the invite. My name is Hugo Rodriguez, and I can talk a little bit about Felix Pago. What we do is we do remittances from the US to Latin America, but we do it a little bit different. Everything is built on WhatsApp. For those of you that doesn't know, WhatsApp is pretty much the the ecosystem that Latin America is pretty much running on. So you can send messages for free to anywhere in the world. So given that most of the people from Latin America were utilizing WhatsApp already, we decided to build that on top of that. And the second thing that is a little bit different, and that's one of the reasons that we are here, is we have been utilizing stablecoins for years now, pretty much for the back end to make the money movement from the US to Latin America.
And so we started working together. It was announced, I think it was Money 2020 last year. I remember you guys had an incredible launch. Volumes were growing like crazy. What has it been like over the past couple of months with I guess, the market cycle that we're in, but also just for your customers?
Yeah, I mean, it has been great. We have been growing a lot for the past few years, but seems like now stable coins are cool, so everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone is asking what's that. But yeah, we have been utilizing that for years now. The growth has been pretty much the same, if not better, from the last time that we spoke. We opened more markets. We are now in 6 different markets in Latin America: Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Colombia, and we are opening a few others the rest of the year.
But you guys are a standout in that your customers don't necessarily see stablecoins. Maybe you can kind of just unpack a little bit more of like the actual use case and journey.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's probably a little bit hard for some of us to explain what's crypto, what's a stablecoin, right? Now imagine not only the person that is sending the remittance from the US, but the person that is receiving the remittance in Guatemala, in the middle of nowhere, Guatemala. They're probably either they have never heard about it or they don't care about it, right? So the way that we utilize the stablecoins is, given that utilizing stablecoins are cheaper and faster, we have decided to receive or utilize the very popular stablecoin sandwich, which is getting the fiat in USD, converting that into stablecoins, in this case USDC, and then make the money movement and transfer that to fiat in local currencies.
And then from like a customer standpoint, you've got 60 million Latinos based in the US. That's like one side of this transaction. You guys had to build this essentially, the 0 to 1 from scratch, but you brought partners in like Zero Hash for that element as well. Maybe you can talk more about that. What was that process like, in terms of like leveraging infrastructure to get access to customers?
Yeah, no, I mean, Zero Hash has been a great partner to Felix. And honestly, in this industry, you need to have partners, but not only partners, but good partners, right? It can either make it or break it in terms of your company or your product. So having good partners like Zero Hash, in which we can leverage the infrastructure and make everything easier for us, it's definitely something that users probably don't know, but it's something that makes their life easier as well.
I guess if I was to jump on to maybe another piece of your product, you've opened up new markets over the past couple of months. You guys do the stablecoin sandwich flow. I heard someone describe Stablecoin Sunday last week, which I thought was interesting. So who knows what's next, but you really abstract that from the end customer. What's some of the challenges that you've got to address then within that? So when you think about a new market and building liquidity for those types of products? Yeah, I mean, every market is very different. If you, for example, compare Mexico, Mexico it's really good on the stablecoin side, right? However, we don't have that opportunity in other markets in Latin America, especially because if you think about it, most of the people are still utilizing cash in these countries, not even bank accounts. So finding those partners that are able to convert either the USD to fiat or other partners that can make life easier, it's also not a difficult. I will not describe it as a problem, but it's definitely one of the challenges that we go through whenever we open a new market. Not only that, but also if you think about it, there's some countries that takes hours, if not days, to be able to send money. We don't want to do that. In Mexico, it takes a few seconds to receive your money in your bank account, so we want to replicate the same experience in the rest of Latin America. Do you think for like end customers that are sending remittances, these are, it's going back to loved ones. Is the key thing and then in this flow speed versus maybe even price, or how does that work for your end customer?
That's a great question. First of all, they have to trust you. At the end of the day, it's money from very hard working people that they're on average they're sending about 20% of what they earn in the U.S. back home. So it's trust. The second one is I will say probably fees. Stablecoins is one of the reasons that we are able to have a lower fee versus some of the competitors, and also the speed. At the end of the day, I feel like everyone in here, if not most of us, will prefer to get or pay faster than slower. So definitely that will be another way.
There's some recent commentary just online too from like other CEOs of payment companies. It feels like every company's working on some sort of strategy in this space right now. When I guess there's some who are still maybe a little bit behind on that. What's your take on like other remittance companies maybe building into this type of flow and technology as well versus like standardized process that they have today?
I think it's probably difficult, especially because there are giants. I mean, I don't know how we can describe them, either giants or dinosaurs that has been in this space for years or decades. So being able to not only add stable coins, but also probably make the whole switch into stable coins they're going to take time. Even probably some hard conversations internally. But I think it's definitely where the industry is going to.
And I got to ask, what's next for Felix? What are you guys working on next in terms of markets or products?
I mean, we definitely have a Christmas list at the company of different products that we want to offer our users. One of the other things that we have been thinking about is probably finally giving the opportunity to users to be closer to stablecoins. You can name it either wallets or something similar to that. So, but yeah, we have a huge list of Christmas that we want to offer.
But I think that's interesting though, because you start off first of all maybe abstracting that away from the customer, and then as you have like maybe better partnerships that you can bring together where it's easier for customers to interact with stables and it's not so weird, I guess. You can sort of bring that back in. Is that what you guys are seeing more and more of? That maybe stored balances in stablecoins are actually important for these end customers?
It's not only important, but also something that some of these users either they don't have a bank account or they don't fully utilize a bank account. If you take a closer look into the data, it's unbelievable, but it's 2025. And in the US, there's a significant amount of remittances that are still being paid in cash. So I will say not only important, but also some of them need it. Or they don't even know that they need it, or that the offers that can bring them to have something like that. So
that's very cool. I think Felix has been one platform at Zero Hash, and we've got broad range of use cases we support today, but really excited for what you guys have built and the scale and growth of the company, and always excited to do more. So appreciate the time, Hugo, and thanks very much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right, that was really great. It was really, I like just like how you started off with like very like removing all the complexity, and then now it's all about now that people feel more ready to use things like a wallet, it's kind of being brought back in. So we're just gonna take a quick little like reset break here to add in an extra chair. So feel free to turn to your neighbor and talk about what was your like one learning from the previous conversation that we just had with Felix. Thank you. All right, we are back now. We have everything refreshed. So if you can end some of your conversations, we're going to get back into the programming. I just checked online, and there are 800 plus of you guys. That is super awesome. So welcome, and so happy to have people both in real life and online here. So we're moving on to our next panel where we're going to zoom out a little bit more about the different types of stablecoin use cases. So I'm going to invite up Sam Broner. You might have read some of his pieces online. He recently just did a piece around, how do stablecoins become money? So Sam Broner from A16Z Crypto, going to welcome right on up here, if you can give him a hand. And then we also have Smitha Pirowit from PayPal. She's the head of crypto at PayPal. And they recently just launched, I think, PYUSD on Stellar, which is super awesome. And then moderating this panel, we have Leo Schwartz, who's a reporter at Fortune. He covers crypto, fintech, and venture. And I think he just had a scoopy piece about how X and Airbnb, some other tech giants, are exploring stablecoins. So I'll let them share more. Let's give them a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and enjoying the AC on a 100-degree day. It was tough walking here today. Just so I can calibrate the panel today, how many people here actually work in crypto or at crypto companies? Oh, okay, so pretty much everyone. Is there anybody who's at a non-crypto company who's interested in stablecoins, might be looking at integrating them or adopting them? All right, so we got a handful of those too. So I think that's a good primer for this talk. Maybe for the people who are at non-crypto companies or even people at crypto companies who might not necessarily be in the stablecoin space, can you each just make the basic pitch for why stablecoins should exist, why they're so transformative?
Yeah, I can get started. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. This is a lovely space, a great turnout, so really excited to be here. So I think everybody here, when you send money, there's an illusion that your money moves fast, right? Like you send somebody something on PayPal or on Venmo, the other person instantly gets it, right? But we all know that's not the reality, right? Like really, it takes days to settle in the back end. Some other company or some other third party is taking the risk of that money not being there. Also, there's tons of middlemen and there's a lot of value being captured there. But what if you can remove all of that and make it a truly peer-to-peer, send value peer-to-peer, right? And that's what stablecoin does. And so we're super excited at PayPal to see what we can enable with that.
Well, that's certainly the right way to be thinking about it. I think stable coins are better money. And when we talk to actually, let me introduce myself. So I'm Sam. I'm an investor on the A16Z crypto team. I started my career as an engineer, and from a distributed systems perspective, I was getting excited about crypto. I worked at the Boston Federal Reserve Bank on their stablecoin initiative. I had done some prototyping of various apps after undergrad, and I'd worked with payment processors and stuff. It's a really frustrating experience, I think, and it took just a couple of hours of playing around with stablecoins to realize that I, as an engineer, could sort of immediately get up, get started, build something that made sense to me in just one day, in a way that operating against Stripe or the other big PSPs, you get the illusion of that, exactly as you said, but it's not really happening. It's not really moving, and it's hard to program and work. So we talk about stablecoins. You can do a payment in less than 1 second that costs less than 1 cent, but you also have better money that's programmable, and people can make more creative, better things. So we're excited about that opportunity.
So I think we can get a little more advanced. And before we really jump into use cases and how stablecoins could be used or are being used, I think one of the biggest challenges as we're on this precipice of adoption is there's just so many options out there. And it's sort of unclear what the future of stablecoins are going to look like. Obviously, you have Tether, which a lot of people don't want to use because of compliance issues. You have USDC, whose company Circle has exploded since its IPO, but whose ownership structure may look a little opaque. Obviously, PayPal has a stablecoin, although I think adoption is still behind the other big options. It seems like there's a news report every week of some other company or consortium launching one. I'm curious from both your perspectives, and obviously you'll have very different ones, what you think the future of stablecoins are going to look like. You're going to have every company that has their own one. Are they going to be interchangeable? How can people who aren't in the space think about how they should actually start entering it and what they should be working with?
You want to start?
Yeah, I can go, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, at PayPal, it's very interesting, right? Like, because for us, what we are good at is the network, right? What we have is a network of consumers, what we have is a network of merchants, and there are tons of problems that we have to solve for them, right? And we look at blockchain, stablecoin, crypto in general as a tool to solve like these user problems. So to your question of what is the future, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a winner or a single stable coin to rule them all. I do think that there will be many different stable coins, and so it's also indicative of what people are building, right? You'll see a lot of orchestration services that enable people to move from one stable to the other without knowing what chain, and I think that's the future, that it'll be cross-chain, cross-stable coin. There's not going to be one big one.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. But maybe just to get a little bit deeper, luckily I have this vantage point of being an investor, and I get to see all these businesses that come in and are building either stuff with stablecoins, maybe they're issuing stablecoins, they're orchestrating stablecoins, or they're enabling stablecoins by being a layer 2 or layer 1 blockchain. Or so that's how I begin to think about it is, where are you sitting in the stack? And I try to take a really expansive perspective on what the stack is. You know, we've made a ton of investments in the layer 2 blockchain space that ultimately were key enablers for, 18 months ago when L2 sort of really took off. That's when it cost less than 1 cent and less than 1 second to send a payment. And so for us, like, that is another way of investing in the stablecoin space. But what does the future look like? Well, the future is going to have this core group of issuers, some orchestration, enabling technology like Dynamic, who's making it so much easier to custody and build apps that use stablecoins. And then there's going to be the apps that are actually using stablecoins on top. So over the winter, I must have talked to 15, 30 remittance companies, all of them growing at like 10% a month. I guess, we're seeing agentic payments as well. We're seeing streaming payments. We're seeing really interesting, creator payments products. I don't want to simplify basically the answer too much and give just like one world of the future. There's all these places that you could step in, and all of them are growing quite quickly right now.
And then jumping into use cases, and maybe we can go back to what actual adoption looks like and how to think about the stack. But in the beginning, stablecoins were really only used for crypto trading and settlement. There was always this promise that they could be used for cross-border payments, for remittances. I think that's still a buzzword that you hear a lot without necessarily it being adopted at a wide scale. But I'm curious, for both your perspectives, having been in this space for a while, where are you seeing right now actual use cases taking off that aren't crypto specific, where it can actually start to be adopted by non-crypto companies?
I'll take that one just because I'm just building on what I was just talking about. Like, we saw a ton of remittance companies this past winter who are building better products on top of crypto rails, and the users don't necessarily know that they're using crypto in the first place. This is a pretty dramatic restructuring of the remittance space, where today, if you're sending $200 from the US to Colombia, that's going to cost 6%, $12 for a $200 remittance. And the people who are making a $200 remittance are often the people who are, they need to make that remittance, but they're also quite cost sensitive. Like, this is someone for whom that cost is really hurting, potentially them or their counterparty, their recipient in Colombia. And with stablecoins, you can do two things in that scenario. One is you can send a stablecoin directly to their wallet address. You're creating then the ability for the person in Colombia to save in a dollar denomination, which might be useful if Colombia has a period of high inflation. At the same time, you're creating a much more competitive market in just one aspect of the remittance process. So instead of today, where someone's likely to own the whole flow from the user in the US to the recipient in Colombia, tomorrow you might have a world where the consumer in Colombia actually can go source their own off-ramp or have a credit card that's attached to the account or this or that. And I think ultimately we're seeing rates fall from something like 6% to something like 2%, 1% over time, which is just a much better scenario. So that's the first and best example from the last 6 months.
One thing I'll add is like PayPal owns Zoom, which is also like a remittance company, right? So in remittance, we're seeing two kinds of use cases. One is the user facing, right, which is you directly send a stablecoin. What we've been doing at Zoom is actually the user agnostic, which is completely the backend. The way remittance works, like traditional remittance works today, is that you have distribution partners in all the countries. You pre-fund them for 24 hours of business. And at the PayPal Zoom scale, this is hundreds of millions of dollars every day. And what happens is that there's a lot of capital that's locked in and there's cost of capital. So what we've been actually working on is that we are now actually pre-funding, but only for like 10 minutes of business, right? Because now you can pre-fund, you don't have to rely on the banking hours, no weekends. And so we're actually just also making the existing remittance kind of framework and construct much better by being able to pre-fund for much smaller time period.
Just one more thing, because I don't want this to be like a remittance panel, even though it's one of my favorite use cases. I don't know if you guys have tried any of the products that are on Farcaster to let you do like streaming payments to creators. I think that that scenario doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to change the world today, but we're not even in inning one yet. Like, it's just that we have the capability and we have the cost structure and we have the programmability, and we're at the beginning of what's going to be I think a Cambrian explosion of creativity in that space. And so I like to picture what happened in something like 2010 when the hyperscaling cloud networks made it, like Azure, AWS, they made it really easy to build a SaaS product. And you know what happened? Now we've got like 10,000 SaaS products for any range of use cases. And I think we're going to see a similar level of specialization and creativity on top of payments that we just haven't seen because it wasn't possible before.
You're always going to have skeptics, but I did think it was interesting that the CEO of AirWallets, which is one of the biggest international payments companies, had this big head-to-head with crypto Twitter, where he was basically like, no, I don't think crypto is actually solving anything. It's not lowering payments. You still have the off-ramp issue where you're going to have high costs. And you had a lot of what's typical on crypto Twitter, a lot of people just calling him dumb. But I'm curious, you do have this CEO of a $6 billion payments company basically saying this doesn't actually work the way that you say it is. I'm curious if how you respond to critics like that.
You should respond, but I just want to say, he had a great redemption arc. Follow his Twitter. He started by saying, I'm not sure this is really going to work. And then over the next few days, he started saying, oh, here's where it might work. Oh, I've been educated. So I just want to give him credit for sort of coming around to some of the key issues and reasons why he hadn't fully understood the use case of crypto in FX or crypto in remittances.
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of agree, right? Because at PayPal, we always say we're in year 5 of a 10-year journey, right? Today, it is really hard when we're launching crypto products. It is hard because we are seeing a lot of challenges with adoption, right? When you look at the businesses, large businesses, they're still very skeptical about holding stablecoin on their balance sheet, right? The also challenges have been is if you pay an invoice in stablecoin, the end-to-end is not connected. Your accounting systems are not connected. Your tax systems are not connected. And so what we're seeing is even though we pay invoices in stable, it is instantly off-ramped into dollars, right? Because that is now connected. So I kind of agree, but I think the vision we have at PayPal is that with the network of consumers, with the network of merchants, when you start getting it in the hands of people and you build utility, right, which is, are you able to check out with this? Are you able to pay for things with this? So that's when the flywheel is created, and that's where our bet is, right? That how do you bring utility to the consumer flywheel and the merchant flywheel?
I am curious though, because this is always the case with crypto, where there is so much hype and so much excitement around what could be, and it always seems, just a bit in the future. And it seems that way with stablecoins, which are on that precipice in so many ways. But I was talking with another fintech CEO, I won't name the company, but he was basically saying, I actually have no organic demand for stablecoins or crypto. Like, it's almost all coming from the crypto industry saying, we should make this happen, and making the arguments for it. And I am curious from both your standpoint, like where you do see those big roadblocks, or the areas where you don't think that this will actually be able to work, or maybe right now it's not working, that you want to highlight.
So do you guys know the term crossing the chasm? Does that ring a bell to people? I'm seeing some nods. The concept is that you have a technology that's being used by early adopters, us in this room right now. And the mainstream doesn't yet have the tooling and integrations or the demand they need to see why it's useful. And stablecoins are crossing the chasm today. Like over the course of the next year, we're seeing people build the tools and integrations. You just sort of brought this up, but you need to have integration into like an ERP, into enterprise resource planning. You need to be able to pay invoices in stablecoins. In order to have stablecoins become part of mainstream, we're going to need integrations into the thousands of services that we don't think about in this room because we're early adopters. Okay, so obviously we're bullish. I think that the question is like, where is the organic demand going to come from? And we really are seeing structural demand for dollars. That is completely confirmed. In any high inflation country, one of the most sought after things you could have is a dollar, and stablecoins make it much easier to build an international dollar account. Stripe, an unbelievable company, and fintech, they added stablecoins in order to expand from 40 countries they could support payouts to 170. And so stablecoins allow them to reach a much larger market, and there clearly is structural demand there. Now, that's not a group of people, those countries, the last 130, are not countries that are driving a huge amount of volume, but it's one sense of where you're seeing organic demand. And then on the B2B payment scenario, another area where we're seeing a lot of growth, people are just tired of waiting 3 to 6 days or even 2 hours. They want to see it in minute one. And so the demand is there, it's just early.
We're seeing some organic kind of demand coming from, like, the payout space, like the gig workers that you want to pay cross-border. So that's interesting because, like, we have a product that has mass payments, and we actually just included PYUSD onto it. And it's interesting because I think, the large companies don't really get it still. But when we actually went and told them that, hey, this is what we're building, they were like, oh, does this mean I can get creators from Africa on my platform now? Because I didn't have a way to pay them before. And so I think for companies, it's slowly coming together as that they're actually increasing, like, their reach. And I think once you start building on the consumer side of it and the ability for large companies like this to make payouts, I think it'll organically come.
Quick plug to Fortune Crypto. Go read our coverage on this. We've written about how big tech companies are starting to look at payouts specifically. But I think one of the reasons that's happening is because it seems like legislation is going to pass in Congress that will cause some of those regulatory unlocks where a lot of the bigger tech companies, a lot of the banks maybe weren't willing to enter the space. Now they will if Congress blesses it. But there's still a question whether that bill is going to pass, and we don't have to get into that deeply. But I am curious from both of you, where you see those headwinds. What happens if a bill doesn't pass? Are you still going to have a willingness for non-crypto companies to come into the space if there isn't regulatory clarity?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think we're lucky to have a really big policy team that is spending a lot of time thinking deeply about where regulation and legislation needs to go. It seems like there was a lot of support for the Genius Act as it moved through the Senate, and that's really exciting. Rather than get caught up in the weeds there, though, the big thing is that if and when we get clear rules of the road for entrepreneurs and big companies to adopt stablecoins, it's that clarity that's going to allow them to experiment and drive more demand and create more use cases. Now that we've begun to get some of that clarity, we're seeing that engineers and businesses are gravitating towards stablecoins because they're better money. So I think we're going to get great regulation. I think we're going to get clear rules of the road. But the biggest thing that I've been excited about recently is just the education that all these entrepreneurs are getting on how they can now do more interesting things with money online.
I think PayPal is like a global company, right? And so while we're super excited about, the shift here in the US, I think we've seen clearly that in Europe and Singapore, that clear regulation kind of brings adoption. So we're super excited as to where this will go.
So maybe we can end on a more educational note. Do you have advice, and it's going to be different advice from both of you, but for companies or people who are interested in getting into the space or adopting, integrating stablecoins into their apps or their platforms, what steps do you take to do that? Obviously, use PYUSD and don't use USDC or Tether or anything else, but besides that.
We're also at a dynamic event right now.
Obviously use dynamic.
Yeah. I think, so I'm a product owner, right? Like, so I think the consumer or the customer is at the center of everything you build. As somebody mentioned this in the panel before, right? Which is that today it is super complex, and how do you build products that like abstract that complexity out, and it's as easy as sending a text message to your friend, right? So I would say when you're thinking about products, user experience first, and I think compliance first mindset also in the long run, I've always have found that leads to a more stable product. So in my head, compliance first and user experience first.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities right now. It's just unbelievable. There's there's a group of opportunities that feel really tractable and clear to me, which are how do we make stablecoins integrate with existing payment systems? How do we get them into ERPs, into Salesforce, into SAP, into invoicing technology, and into point of sale systems? I think that's, there's unbelievable value to be created by you all building things in those spaces. And then there's going to be, there's the reseeding application layer. It's the remittances and the B2B payments. And then the thing I'm frankly most excited about are what ideas can you pursue now that you can only build on top of better money? And I listed some of them, maybe agentic payments, maybe streaming payments, maybe it's creator payouts, maybe it's new IP revenue splitting. I luckily get to see a lot of these ideas, and I'm not sure what's ultimately going to fascinate the consumer, but I know that we now have this opportunity for experimentation that is just so exciting and feels so refreshing, and that's one of the areas I'm most excited to think about.
The one area I'm super excited to see what comes out is actually supply chain, like global supply chain. I mean, there's a lot of components that exist, right? You have the ability to write smart contracts, you have stable coins, but I haven't seen like a product out there that's helping solve that. So I am super excited about what's going to come in that space.
Yeah, just last question along that vein. Sam, what's your favorite stablecoin related pitch that you've seen recently? And Smita, what's your favorite use of PYUSD you've seen recently?
I don't love to pick my favorites, but I do think that I'll just tell you a scenario that I had that was it was so fun. I play basketball. I rent this gym in Chelsea, and usually people Venmo me after because it's like $400. Everyone sends me $20, and someone knew that I was tweeting a lot about stablecoins, like give me a follow. It's relentless. But this guy comes up to me and says, "Can you mind if I send you USDC?" So he sent me USDC. I get it like 2 seconds later. It costs a fraction of a cent. And by the time we had finished the conversation, I'd also staked the USDC and begun to earn interest on it. And the fees that the cost of sending the money, the staking it had paid for itself by the end of the weekend. So just this like really modern way of thinking about sending money. And I get to experience things like that all the time with the products that we see daily.
So I think for me, for the best use of PYUSD, actually has been, I'll say two things. One is I'm super excited about accepting crypto payments. So we've always known that if you want to shop on an international merchant, it's like 6% credit card fees. But now the ability for you to actually do that with extremely low fees, I think that'll be like spectacular. So I'm excited about payments, just a consumer to business payment. Also super excited about like large enterprises, B2B. To your point about getting stablecoin invoices within ERP, like we did that with SAP, we're seeing a lot of traction. So I think those are the two use cases at the different end of the spectrums.
Sam, you opened a can of worms with staking, which we could go into, but we won't get into that. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you for listening today. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Dynamic and team.
All right, that was really awesome. I really liked what you had to say about like specificity and how like if you think about stablecoins, it can solve such broad problems, but just really specific things as well as like how can I pay out my creators in Africa? Like such a specific problem that can be solved by such a global product. And so right now we actually have our break. Yay, I'm sure everyone's like super excited for that. So feel free to head out into the networking area. There's some snacks. We're gonna bring out some cool drinks later, like iced drinks. But for now, there is coffee and tea. And so please head back here at 4 p.m. sharp. And if you're online, I've seen like over 1,300 of you. Super grateful. Feel free to grab your own drink, take a break, and then meet us back here at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. All right, everybody, if you can grab your seat, we're going to get started pretty shortly, like the next 30 seconds, 29, 28. Yes, you know the drill. All right. Thank you so much for wrapping up your conversations. I think we may be back online and live now. So hello to, I think I just checked, it was like 1,600 or 1,800 viewers. So thank you so much for being here. So just to give some insights into the next half of our programming, we're going to have a fireside chat with the co-founders of Dynamic and Zero Hash. And then we'll have lightning talks by Kraken Inc. and then Ramp. And then everyone's free to have our happy hour. We'll have beer, wine, some charcuterie, as well as non-alcoholic cold beverages on this hot day. All right. Love that. Okay, so to introduce our next fireside chat, I want to bring up Itai Turban, CEO and co-founder of Dynamic. If you can give him a warm welcome. Yeah. And then I'd like to invite up Edward Woodford, CEO and co-founder of Zero Hash. Yay, let's go. And then I want to invite up our moderator, Drew Rogers of Stable Dash. You may have seen him in your not DMs, your replies, not the DMs, in your replies, because he knows everything about the stablecoin ecosystem. So we can all give them a warm applause for this fireside chat. Thank you.
Well, this is fun. Thank you guys for doing this. And thank you for hosting. This seems like an incredible group. Everyone I've been talking to is having an awesome time. So just give it up for these guys putting this on. This is awesome. Okay, so let's start here. We'll just dive right into it. We don't have a ton of time. When I think about Zero Hash and Dynamic, these are companies that are not new to the conversation. You guys have been building, you've been leading, you've adopted and adapted and evolved, and you guys have been leading companies in crypto for many different seasons. And so what I'd like to start with for each of you is for those who are maybe entering this stablecoin conversation for the first time, I think it would undersell what you guys are bringing to the table as leaders and as companies to not touch on a little bit of the journey of where you've been quickly. What parts of this pre-stablecoin chapter have prepared you guys for this moment? What learnings, what specific things that you might have gone through in this pre-stablecoin season of the companies versus maybe a founder who's starting a company right now for the first time? Maybe, Itai, if you want to lead the way.
Yeah, I think for me, the key point, I think, where I realized the current payment infrastructure is broken was when, and therefore, over time needs to be fixed, I was at Zenefits, which was a big HR tech company, super fast growing. I ran their platform team, and one of the products that I was responsible for was contractor payments. And I was like, this is great. We can pay contractors internationally. This is awesome. And then, I started chatting with the engineering team. Okay, how does this actually work? And it turns out that at the end of every day, they would manually download like an Excel sheet from Zenefits and manually upload that to Silicon Valley Bank for ACH transactions and close their eyes and hope for the best. And I was like, there's no way this is the way this stuff happens. And it turns out it does. Right? It turns out the way you pay contractors internationally for a very long time was you literally would download an Excel sheet with transactions and you would upload it and hope that SVB accepts that and kind of processes that. And then you close your eyes and you hope that in 2 days the money shows up elsewhere. Sometimes it's 4 days because there are 2 hops. And that seemed insane to me. Right, and then full circle, Yoni, my co-founder, and I actually started talking about crypto probably in like 2011, 2012. But full circle, when we started Dynamic in 2021 and 2022, it became extremely clear to us that this is the way in which money should move, right? And so it was kind of these 2 points of, hey, this thing in 2015, 2016, from like the hottest tech startup out there, is fully broken. And here's a solution that's extremely elegant and extremely global. That for us was what kind of put two and two together as to, okay, this is clearly the way this will work going forward. It might take 5 years, might take 7, might take 10, doesn't matter. It is clearly the way in which we will globally move money over the next 10 years. I do not see a scenario based on these experiences in which it is not a primary method in which we do global money movement. So that's really how we thought it, or how we got to this conclusion.
Yeah, I suppose it's passion, right? So trying to solve a real problem. The space is shiny right now. I can guarantee you it will become less shiny at some point. And then it will become even shinier. That is how any technological evolution happens, right? And so to your question, I think one of the challenges of building this space, and we've been building this space in stablecoins and crypto since 2017, is that there are these natural inflection points. And so although this is a stablecoin industry, there will be different applications. I mean, you're starting to see, for example, the founder of Air Wallets pick some holes, and I think some valid holes, right? And so I think we need to make sure that we're not acolytes to the technology. It's, to your point, it's actually acolytes about the problem that we're trying to solve, and balancing the hype with the fear of these different pieces, and when naturally this will be a cyclical space, and trying to narrow that emotional bound, and be, to your point, very focused on a time horizon that is long. In the long run, we are right? But at some point, we will be wrong, and there will be different failures, there'll be different experimentations. And so that's why I think excites me about both Dynamic and Zero Hash, is that we can take multiple bets with our partners doing different things in different applications. So I think that's the challenge, but also equally the opportunity.
I got to ask what holes were poked that you think were potentially valid? Because that guy's gotten a lot of heat for what he did. So I'm curious if what you mean when you say that.
I mean, the guy's a genius marketer as well, right? So hate is fine online. I think, again, I think stablecoins are absolutely revolutionary in a bunch of different ways. Does it solve every single problem across every single payment channel? No. Right? And so it really depends on the application and the use case. And I think that's what's key. So I think Jack's pulled out some elements, and I can almost guarantee you that they are looking at stablecoins. Right? But I think he's picking some elements. I think if you look at a cross-border remittance use case, and Felix Pago is a great example of a group solving a real problem in a real channel where there's really great liquidity pools in places like Mexico and other places, and where there's a real need. But I think this argument that stablecoins in every single channel, every single use case, every type of remittance makes sense, I don't think holds true today. I think that the applications will increase, but that will actually be dependent on local liquidity pools expanding.
Any thoughts? I feel like you got some.
Yeah. No, I think, look,
I was told to make this spicy. Am I doing?
No,
sort of spicy.
Perfect. This is perfect. I think to your point, like, first, genius marketer. The fact that we're spending, this is like the, here in the previous sessions, we're spending time talking about Air Wallets. Phenomenal. I am very jealous, but I think his point, which is right, is that he built a competitive system to stablecoins, right? And so in this world, in a lot of ways, it works without it, right? And so if Air Wallets, for instance, takes over globally and is the only used system, and they can kind of balance everything on their end, yes, that is correct. You don't necessarily need stablecoins, but it's essentially, yes, if you have a direct competing, or like not direct, but there's a competing technology that you spent a lot of time and resources on, it makes sense that you're shying away from an alternative. I do think that he's correct that in spaces in which there's very high frequency of money movement, we've gotten to very efficient markets, right? I think it's going to be very hard for stablecoin to be more efficient than euro versus dollars. I don't think there's potentially
and two-sided, right? So that the
Correct.
the netting does actually.
That's right. There's exactly, but I do think that the world's bigger than that, right? And where I think all of us are seeing traction, and again, Felix Pago is a good example, is anywhere outside that, right? Where there's immediate value. There's also immediate value for stablecoins for US-based account. People in the US don't realize that people outside the US kind of want exposure to dollars, right? And those use cases, the use cases of global kind of treasury movement, are huge use cases that I think he does not necessarily even cover in his argument, right? He kind of siloed stablecoin to a very specific thing, and then he kind of picked that apart. But it's sort of like arguing against the internet, right? It's like there's many things in the internet. You know, if you pick one thing, yes, you can argue against it, but there's so many use cases here.
Yep. Pivoting a little bit. So huge news recently with some, Stripe's recent acquisitions. I wanted to ask you about this directly, just as you think about the Privy acquisition, obviously massively close to the wallet space, the technology there. How are you feeling as a founder building this company? And as you think about that, is that validating for you? Does that fire you up? Like personally, how does that feel?
I haven't heard of it. What is it? No, no look, I think first, congrats to that team. They're a great team. We're really happy for them. I think that the bigger picture here is the following, which is when we started Dynamic, our thesis was extremely, and I said this at the beginning, our thesis was extremely straightforward, which is if you fundamentally believe that the way in which we move money globally and we do things is on-chain going forward, it's steady state in 10 years, and every app on your phone is going to have a crypto component, then you have to fundamentally believe that every app on your phone will have a wallet component, right? Because every crypto transaction starts with a wallet and ends with a wallet, right? And if you believe that thesis, then you have to believe there's going to be gigantic companies generational companies that allow kind of this wallet infrastructure at global scale, right? And with that fundamental belief, I kind of think about acquisitions in this space, like the Stripe acquisition, as extremely bullish signals that we're moving in the right space, right? There are giant wallet companies out there like Fireblocks, right? That's a giant wallet company, right? Their success did not imply anything besides kind of growing the pie for everyone else. And so, when I look at those and when I look at these signals of Web 2 companies coming in and doubling down on everything crypto, I become extremely bullish on the fact that we're accelerating and the fact that in our seed stage, we said 5 years and everyone gets a wallet. We're actually closer to that prediction. We're 3 years in. We have 2 more years to be right. I kind of think that this makes me extremely bullish that we're actually kind of heading in the right direction.
But just on that point, right, about how founders should think about this space, I think we're still really early, right? So those who've been in the space for long enough will remember that Curve got bought by PayPal. And you mentioned Fireblocks. Everyone was, wow, that's the end of Fireblocks. It was the best thing that happened to Fireblocks, by far, right? Curve got bought $300-400 million, and then 2 years later, Fireblocks is raising $8 billion, right? So just because there's big players in this space buying companies around you, there is still massive opportunity. And that's why I think we connected, Yoni, Itai, myself, and others. We're in this for the long run, right? And so if you're in it for the long run, payments is incredibly fragmented. Stripe is big, but there's many other payment groups. It's a very fragmented space. I don't know the exact market share, but in some markets it's very low single digits, in some it's higher single digits. So the other 90% of the market is going to be using something else, right? And so I think to your first point around what should founders look for and builders, don't be put off by this sense that there's big players in this space. And I think the Fireblocks Curve partnership should give people a lot of confidence. It acted as a great validator for the space. Fireblocks then went on to become a massively bigger, multiples bigger. It took out a competitor, right? So I think there's a lot to be excited about by those sorts of acquisitions. And it's a great validator for the space and a great opportunity.
It's amazing. Can you guys touch on the relationship you have just with Dynamic plus Zero Hash? Specifically what that has unlocked for you, how you guys are thinking about building in the future?
Sure, I could maybe start. I met Edward yesterday. No, I'm kidding. Look, we've been. I think we've been working together for a while now, and the cool thing is, and the relationship is, to your point, it's very much a two-way relationship, right? Dynamic. What you realize very quickly is essentially you can kind of make it extremely easy for someone to spin up a wallet, which is where we kind of thrive, right? Like at the end of the day, what we do extremely well is the ability for you to show up somewhere and enter an email and get a wallet immediately or connect your existing wallet, right? And you do that and you solve a first real problem, which is, okay, reducing the friction for someone to get on chain without them even knowing. But then you realize very quickly that the second problem after that is getting something into their wallet or getting something out of their wallet, right? And that's where this relationship is powerful, because it means that we cannot exist without the ability to globally, in an extremely efficient scale, in a compliant manner, get money into a wallet or out of the wallet, which is what Zero Hash does incredibly well, right? And in massive scale, with a bunch of kind of additional features on top. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, vice versa is true, which is when you move money on chain or off chain, you got to move it to a wallet, right? Where dynamic comes in, right? And so that's how we view that relationship. It's super symbiotic in that sense. You know, not to overuse lingo, but just because one kind of builds on top of the other, and to build, you know, the next Venmo, the next global remittance app, the next, you know, treasury management app, you kind of, the next payroll app, the next contractor payment app, you kind of need both of these solutions together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I agree with everything Ty's saying. I think that when you look at, for example, payroll, I think I view that as part of a broader lens around, for example, any two-sided marketplace, right? And, you know, you've seen announcements from Meta and others. And so, you know, the first bit that we do is effectively allow people to convert that, make that super seamless. And some people may have a wallet, right? But the second piece is a lot of people don't. And that's obviously where the partnership comes in. Secondly, I think equally, the next generationally defining business, whether that is on a global scale, whether that be the next Replit, whether that be the next Uber, whether that be the next creator platform, I think will be built on stablecoins, both from a wallet perspective and from a transactional basis. And so that's what excites me about the partnership, is it's that symbiotic nature to allow existing players in any two-sided marketplace to adjust the way and create more optionality in a really, really seamless, and I mentioned user experience friendly way. And then secondly is to enable builders that are creating businesses that span, you know, hundreds of countries to instantly access those geos and unlock that. And that's the opportunity.
What about each of those things? Because I agree, I'm seeing there's very clear swim lanes happening across the industry with the wallet side and the sort of on and off ramp in and outside. What about those two areas? I think for me, I'm always thinking about like where does defensibility come in for a business? What are the most, the things when you're building that are the real core defensible technologies that you're building? What about the wallet and what about the on and off ramping in your experience building it has made it feel defensible? What is so hard about it?
Yeah, I can start with the wallet side. Look, at the end of the day, the vast majority of developers globally don't really care, or should they care, about crypto, right? In the same way that no one wakes up in the morning and says, let me figure out the ins and outs of OAuth, and no one wakes up in the morning and says, okay, I really want to learn about the wonderful world of Swift and ACH. Right? They kind of want to implement something and move on their merry way and kind of do what they actually are trying to, or build what they're actually trying to build. That is doubly true in a vibe coding environment where your next set of startups are going to be built extremely quickly on top of existing tools, because then you can get to market extremely quickly, right? We are, in that sense, kind of a crypto abstraction company, right? Our goal is to abstract away as much complexity as possible for you to implement these magnificent global rails in your app, right? And it starts with wallets, and it brings on-ramps and off-ramps on top of it, and it brings swaps, and it brings identity, and it brings all that type of stuff. And the defensibility in a lot of ways is that kind of all-in-one stack, right, that abstracts away that complexity, but also the fact that you can implement this all-in-one stack in in 5 minutes and go on your merry way. And that's actually a non-trivial problem to solve, because you're taking a lot of that complexity that is today in front of the scene, is kind of in the forefront, and moving it behind the scenes for this kind of abstracted experience. It's the same reason why companies like Plaid exist, right? Where their entire hypothesis and defensibility is around the fact that no one wakes up in the morning and says, let me integrate with 50 or 100 bank accounts and pull all that data and do that at scale. right? And the same that Stripe has in terms of like 5 lines of code, and you get access to global kind of ACH and credit card, et cetera. And so that's where we see our defensibility. We really think about Dynamic as kind of an abstraction company or a crypto abstraction company, where our goal is to make it extremely simple for you to tap into these global rails and not think about any of the complexity behind the scenes.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, where Zero Hash is positioned, I think technical abstraction as well, right? What we do is complex at scale that we do it on across, 100 different assets. If you just look at stable coins, the number of stable coins and the velocity of movement in the space is incredibly fast. So, one data point I'm proud of is USDC.world was launched, I think, last week, and within 3 days we launched USDC.world, right? So there's this complexity and continuous evolution that exists, and that for us being at the cutting edge of defense of that technological revolution and providing our customers with as much breadth of choice is really critical. Secondly, I would say it's trust, right? The next wave of adopters in this space will be the largest banks in the world. They'll be the largest merchants in the world. And what they're looking for is trust, right? The way that these decisions are made at these organizations is a CYA risk approach. Everything's viewed in the framework of risk. Everything. So the reason why players are entering this space in stables isn't because they truly believe in the technology. It's because the risk curve has shifted. It's now more risky not to be involved than to be involved. But in order to make the decisions and the partner decisions that they make, it's largely around that. And so for us, having been building since 2017, I think a pretty incredible track record with partners ranging from, BlackRock, Shift4, Nuve, Felix Pago, a range of interactive brokers. These are publicly traded massive organizations with a lot to lose. I think having done that for the last 8 years and continuing to do so is a huge competitive advantage that we lean into.
100%. How do you specifically, when I think about Zero Hash, I've always thought about just the regulatory strength and history that you guys have. What are your current feelings right now, Edward, around Genius, how that's progressing? Is that competitively really exciting for you guys? Does that feel like, hey, maybe some of this like moat is, like if you're able to be honest about that, or I'm candid, what you think about it?
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, candidly, they've crushed it. Like they've more licenses than most. Like you guys were first to the game there. I wanted to ask you how you're currently feeling about that.
Yeah, so look, I think within we view licensing as part of trust. It's one framework. You're abstracting away complexity. Getting a slap for unlicensed money transmission is a federal crime, right? And so that's one of the elements. But it's one part of the overarching trust. I think with regards to your specific question around Genius is largely focused around the issuer. And so if you're of a certain size, you're going to have to be a bank, right? So this concept that banks lose with the Genius Act is, no, I mean, the banks win, right? Circle is going to have to become a bank, right? So that's the reality of it. We're not an issuer, so it doesn't affect us in that sense. Where I do think it plays in is that I do believe many, many banks will issue stable coins, and that's infrastructure that we provide. And then secondly, to my earlier comments, what it's going to do is it's going to drive a massive fragmentation in stable coins. Massive, right? We've seen JPMMD, every bank is thinking about this. And so right now you have, probably 5 stable coins that matter. Some would argue less, right? I think you're
like asset fragmentation, you mean?
Yeah, so
many
like
of them?
USDC. So USDC, USDT, RLUSD, let's call those the big three. And then PYUSD are, but after the big 2, you kind of drop down. I think you're going to have 10 to 20 very, very large, meaningful stablecoin issuers created, right? And so what that does is it creates this increased technical complexity where Zero Hash is actually perfectly positioned, which is around interoperability. So if I want to send you a stablecoin and I've got JPMD and you've got USDT, it doesn't work, right? There's got to be an interoperability layer that exists. There's got to be interoperability cross-asset, and there's also got to be interoperability cross-chain. So even if I'm sending you USDT, if you're on USDC. Let's say they're launching on Lightning, and I'm on USDT.eth, again, these things don't compute. So the Genius bill is actually going to create, what it does incredibly well is that it's going to make this technology distributed everywhere. That's what's incredibly exciting. Everybody in the US is going to have access to a stablecoin instantly because all the banks are going to jump in. That's incredible. But the usability challenge is only going to become greater, and that's why I think companies like ours, which abstract away the complexity, only benefit significantly from Genius.
Incredible answer. All right, we got to wrap up here. So last question for you both. This is a room full of stablecoin builders, leaders, people who are trying to drive the space forward. What would be the thing that you would want to leave this room with? This is a serious, sector for you, beachhead market. What would be the call or invitation to this room if, when you're thinking about the kind of commercial relationships you're looking to form, the types of builders you're looking to support, what would be your invitation to them?
Come to our happy hours would be the invitation. No, I think, look, I think we get excited. We Dynamic kind of get this really special spot in the world of crypto, which is when you start a company, one of the first things you need is wallet infrastructure, right? Because you can't build anything without it, which means that we get to see a bunch of really creative use cases that have not existed before. Anywhere from kind of new neobanks to, again, global money movement to, I just saw a use case where you move money, but then you actually claim it as cash in certain locations globally, right? These are really cool use cases. And so my call, my ask is if you're thinking about this space or if you're building in this space, we have a blast just brainstorming with folks these solutions, right? One of the cool things is we get to build alongside a lot of builders who come in with ideas that we could not build for because did not exist, right? And so I think our ask, and our call is talk to the Dynamic team. If you're working on something, you're building something that's unique, tell us what you're building. We want to build tools for that, right? Again, we're a crypto abstraction company. Our goal is to remove these constraints so you can focus on the actual use case. And so that's pretty much our call to action, again, with the addition of come to the happy hours at 5. Those are really the two.
I think somewhat linked. I mean, I think for us, where we look to either invest in companies or what excites us is multi-year time horizons, right? If the problem's easy, it would have been solved. So if your time horizon has to be long, because the problem's got to be big enough, and I think that's the first point. I think to Itai's point, we like doing things for the first time as well. So when you look at, for example, our account funding product with stablecoins, we've been able to bring the first regulated clearinghouse, regulated by the CFTC, to enable stablecoins. That's Kalshi with Zero Hash. We've brought in the first regulated broker-dealer directly into stablecoins, which is Tasty Trade. And then we've brought in the first regulated fund in the United States that is a tokenized fund, which is both Benji by Franklin Templeton. We've also brought in BlackRock, which is technically outside of the United States, but also we've brought in groups like Hamilton Lane with Republic. So we love bringing in the first players into the space and disrupting. Especially across a range of regulated areas, whether it be CFTC, SEC, FINRA, and really educating people about the benefits of stablecoins and how you can make this an incredible unlock for your clients.
Incredible. Thank you, guys. Let's give it up for them.
Thank you.
All right, that was really great. It was really good to hear that, when you're thinking about building a stablecoin product, interoperability or making sure that different rails can work together is really important. So now we're gonna move into our quick lightning talks session. And first I'd like to invite up Andrew Kohler, founder of Inc. And so, yeah, please give him a warm welcome. He has a really bullish presentation. They recently actually launched the Inc. or announced the Inc. token. So welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks Itai for inviting us and the Kraken rebellious crew back there, so appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna talk about Stablecoin Summer with Kraken and Inc. I'm I'm going to shill a little bit of a stablecoin that we did within Kraken with a consortium, and then how we're leveraging some of Dynamics technology and other things built by people in this room to kind of accelerate our stablecoin offering at Kraken. Really quick, I always flash this. This is me, my Telegram, Twitter. Follow me if you want to talk about stables or build anything. I'm always responsive, usually. Sometimes it takes me a few days. So the thing I'm shilling is this thing called USDG, which is like the global dollar network that we did with a consortium of Paxos, Robinhood, and Anchorage. And it's something that we launched maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and it recently deployed on Inc. a couple weeks ago. I think it's around, if I last checked, like 90 to 100 million in usage, which isn't bad for only being a few months old. But this is like just one piece of Kraken strategy. The rest of it is kind of going all in on a diverse set of stables, and we don't really want to put our eggs into one basket, but we do want to have this to enable like yield as a first-class citizen across all of our products, or if anybody's holding this on chain, you just automatically get yield. These are, in some capacity, these are all the people we've worked with and have some kind of deal going on with USDG. I mean, you see the consortium in here, but there's all kinds of like weird things happening with all of them. Like WorldPay is interested in using this. Some of the smaller like remittance products, and we're thinking about our own too. So we always think that yield sharing democratizes asset flow and is like a baseline. We don't really want it to be like a stable that you just convert your Bitcoin to and then you just hold it there. We want to make sure that no matter where this is being used on chain, you are getting some kind of yield, whether it's in a protocol or just being held like on your wallet. And so, like I said, we want to enable this as like a given. And it's like it's not an extra step, like you have to do an extra action to get yield on this. You were just holding it and getting it. And this is, our offering across all of Kraken to be able to hold USDG and get passive yield, we're using a dynamic powered product that we're calling Kraken Global Wallet, and it's going to exist in all of our products and some upcoming launches. And it's going to treat like all the stables as like a first-class citizen, hopefully abstract all the chains, make it so that your yield is just automatic and you don't have to opt into anything. And I don't know, we love it. I don't know if we really want to call it a wallet. That's like an internal debate, but that's what it's called right now. And so like I said, it treats stables as a first-class citizen. Of course we're going to allow like all the other like assets and everything to be held on it, but we really want to focus on like your stable experience with it in some capacity. It might be later this year, but that is definitely a goal with this thing. Pepe's happy with his yield, right? Like he's got to be peaceful. Always have to throw in a Pepe. So the diversity on Inc. with all the stable coins. While we do have USDG, we love that there's like all these different stables out there, decentralized ones, I don't know, weird ones that pop up, some like derivatives of like M0, anything like that. We want to enable all of them to be there. We're definitely not going to put all of our eggs in USDG. You don't have to have USDG to use Inc. All of our products and our upcoming kind of secret protocol things will leverage all kinds of stable coins. And like I said, the remittance thing. This is kind of funny. I was talking to our CEO about remittances, and being in crypto so long, it always seems really weird to me to like have to go through a bunch of hoops to pay somebody when like I'm just sitting there and it's like, okay, I have an address, I can just send it. Like, why do we have to build all this like extra infrastructure just for remittances? But then I got enlightened and stepped out of my bubble, and it's like, okay, you have to have the fiat providers, the conversion, make it go to the local currency. So we hope that our push into USDG and then all the other stables that we support would enable like any kind of build of remittance apps on top of Inc. or things that we're building. Yeah, and like one of the biggest drivers we find to like actually get people to withdraw from Kraken and use things is that yield. So if this is like able to democratically distribute yield, then hopefully like we can just get more people using Kraken Global Wallet, be able to get off of Kraken and actually use like on-chain products. So I mean that's a repeat, but emerging stablecoin networks, they bring this yield and choice. We like the decentralized ones are kind of strange. Like I think regulatory speaking, we've had to disable a lot in different jurisdictions. But I hope on Inc, like we can have them there and have them be present and allow people to withdraw and give them like some kind of incentive to realize like there's other options than just centralized stablecoins. So we're not going to be biased on any of these. And then to close, actually, I had something in here that didn't get included, but back to the point about people withdrawing, I always like to include the stat that only 20% of our users, which we have 15 million accounts, have ever withdrawn from Kraken and done something on chain. So it's a really weird gap that we have, and we hope that like some of the on-chain yield through Kraken Global Wallet and other products will get people to stay within the Kraken ecosystem and also be on-chain and get that yield. But this is a quote I love to include in presentations, just as like a reminder, because this is the Stablecoin Summit, and we're talking about BlackRock, we're talking about institutions, all these different people. This is from one of the SEC commissioners before. I don't think she's still there. I don't remember. But Caroline Crenshaw, in her dissent to the Bitcoin ETF decision, was commenting on why is so much energy being expended on linking all of crypto to the existing financial system. So I just like to include this as like a reminder, even though like we are like having like this breakthrough moment in the cycle of stables and RWAs, we still can't forget our roots of like, this is amazing technology that we can just sit there and send money to somebody else, other side of the world, without any kind of middleman. So no other commentary other than just, I love it as a reminder of like why crypto's here, and we can't forget that, even though we do have all these institutions and things coming on board. And that's all I got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. What I really liked is it really shows how when you're working with stablecoins, you don't have to go alone. You can go together with a consortium. And even within that, there were some institutions. So it's all about all you builders here really building that together. Just quick note on the AV side, if you guys can help me bring it back to the regular thing. Thank you. All right, so before I welcome our next guest, who here likes to save time and money? Raise your hand. And if you don't, I'm going to call your CFO, all right? So the next company that I'm going to bring up is going to be Adam Summers, who leads, he's a lead product manager at Ramp. So he's going to share more about how they think about using stablecoins and their stablecoin strategy. So if you can give Adam a warm welcome, I'm going to bring him up, and he will present to all of us. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Adam. Nice to see you all. Not every hand went up about time and money. Who knows about Ramp? Who does not know about Ramp? Who does not realize they're sitting in the Ramp office? So yeah, our mission at Ramp is to save companies time and money. And we believe that stablecoins are going to play an important role in that mission. So quick like overview of what we do as a business to put into context what I do at Ramp, which is help our international initiatives. Ramp offers a bunch of financial products to businesses, from corporate cards to expense management, reimbursements, vendor payments, bill pay-like products, procurement, treasury, accounting automations. We are a multi-product platform. And more our customers are global. So we started 6 years ago with businesses based in the US, small businesses mostly. Now we serve global enterprises where, in order to win their business, we need to be able to support their employees wherever they are, in the US or abroad, in countries where stablecoins are already very popular, and in countries where they're not. And so I'll maybe touch upon some challenges we face today and where we see stablecoins fitting in over time. It's really hard to move money globally, which I'm sure you guys have heard about all morning. It's slow, it's expensive. People receiving funds on the receiving end of a payment aren't always made whole on the SWIFT network due to correspondent banks taking their fees. For us, in order to get employees reimbursed quickly, in order to have companies able to hold on to their cash as long as possible before paying out a vendor and still have their payments land on time, faster payments and cheaper payments are really important. And so we started off looking at stablecoins at Ramp, particularly through the lens of international payments. Money movement was like our first use case, but we believe there's a place for stablecoins in terms of money movement, money storage, spending on cards, and also internally for our own purposes. So just touched on money movement. Heard the last speaker or two speakers ago mention dollar access. There are parts of the world, obviously, where devaluing currency makes business harder, and access to US dollar accounts, US dollar cards is extremely valuable. We believe, and if you follow the news, there have been a couple of announcements on this in the last couple of months. We believe there's an opportunity to bring Ramp to a set of customers that traditionally have a harder time accessing the US financial system. And so we're quite bullish on stablecoin-backed cards as a way to do that. And then internally, like as builders, we often think about how to serve our customers. Within Ramp, we have a whole team dedicated to our internal corporate treasury management. As you can imagine, running card programs in different countries and trying to help our customers accelerate payments in different countries. We hold currency in a number of currencies around the world in accounts in different countries. And when we need to make sure that like our reserve account for our euro issuing program is topped up to a balance to meet a 3-day weekend in France, so to speak, we have sort of some very sophisticated models to make sure we have money in the right place at the right time. And so we feel the same sorts of pains that our customers are feeling, and we believe there's an opportunity for stablecoins to help power some of that internal infrastructure. Just about like our strategy toward rolling out stablecoins at Ramp, we believe that the right tool should be used for the right job. We think that stablecoins do provide benefits in certain areas and maybe are still developing benefits in other areas. We see a lot of opportunity for cross-border payments and opportunities in certain markets. We are a little bit less convinced right now for certain domestic use cases, but that's not to say that we don't believe that's going to evolve over time. So we're trying to look at use case by use case and figure out, are stablecoins the right tool for this job? And if so, great, let's pursue that. We also believe that like it can be an advantage to be an early adopter as a company like Ramp, but it's not always an advantage. We are a very rapidly growing company. We are quite large now. And there are times where being innovative and sort of like going after something new can be really helpful for us. But we also work with fast-moving startups, as well as some really old school, more paper and pen types of businesses. And so while we have customers that are chomping at the bit for access to stablecoins as ways to power their business, we have other customers that aren't quite ready for that. And so if you sort of think about like the adoption curve for new technology, we want to make tools available to customers that want it. We also want to make sure that customers that aren't ready for new things are able to access the tools that they are used to, and we want to serve both of those markets. And finally, we like to experiment early and often. Stablecoins have obviously been around for a while. The use cases are becoming more prevalent. The popularity is becoming more well-known. And so we have teams that are running experiments all the time, and we believe in doubling down on those experiments that are working. And so for the wallet providers, for money-moving services, for corporate treasury tools, like we love what you're building. We're excited to work with you. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, thank you so much, Adam. That was really insightful to hear how Ramp approaches stable coins, and I really like how it's like experiment early and often, and also kind of going back to like when you think about stable coins, it's such a global product, but and has so many use cases that when you sit down with your team, you should really think about like what problem am I trying to solve, and is stablecoins the right solution at this point, or do we need to use different tools? So just to end off today's programming, I'd like to invite up Itai to do some closing remarks before we head into the happy hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I'll keep it super short given there's drinks outside, which is, I think, a higher priority than me. But just want to summarize the day a little bit, right? We got a chance to see kind of a really nice kind of full spectrum of solutions that people talked about today, right? Anywhere from Felix Pago, which if you haven't used that product, by the way, I highly recommend setting up on WhatsApp and trying it out. It's magical. Anywhere from that to how PayPal uses stablecoins, how A16Z is thinking about stablecoins and thinking about the future of that, how, again, Dynamic and Zero Hash are thinking about it, how Ramp is starting to think about it across treasury management and global payouts, how the Ink chain is starting to think about it, and Kraken kind of on a global scale. The main takeaway from those is that saying stablecoins is, again, it's like saying the internet, right? There's so many use cases here, and they're all happening at the same time, which is really, really, really exciting, right? Because it means that we can move forward extremely quickly on all these. And if one doesn't really work, there are 10 or 20 other use cases that are happening today. And if you take nothing else away from this conversation, you should take that this is happening now. It's not happening in the future. This is not theoretical. There are billions and tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars being moved with stablecoins today. They're done through on-ramps and off-ramps and wallet providers. And that's to me, that's thrilling, because it means that we're moving to a place where crypto is not a separate thing, but crypto is a key part and will become more and more so a key part of the global financial system. And with that, I just want to thank the RAM team for, again, being extremely kind with their space, which is an incredible space, and letting us use it. I think it also shows a signal that we're seeing fintech companies who are passionate about stablecoins, passionate about crypto, and are willing to kind of dedicate their time and resources to that. I want to thank the Zero Hash team for, again, being incredible partners across multiple initiatives. This one, obviously, but across many, many things that we get to do together. And with that, I urge everyone to stay, kind of have a drink, talk to folks. There are a lot of builders in this room. Lots of folks are building really interesting stuff. And just want to say thank you. And with that, let's go drink.